Axolotls reach sexual maturity while staying as tadpoles their entire lives. These guys are in the salamander family, but they left about 100 to 200 million years ago and became something else entirely. Their closest living relative today is the tiger salamander, and they're close enough that they can actually interbreed, which is weird because they're considered completely separate species. The thing everybody knows about axolotls is that they're perpetually juveniles. They never go through metamorphosis because they don't have the thyroid-stimulating hormone that causes other salamanders to turn into adults. That means they always have their gills, those frilly things on the side of their head. It's called neoteny, ne-ah-t-ne, which means they reach sexual maturity without ever leaving their juvenile state. A few weeks ago, I drew a mud puppy, and it has almost the exact same structures for almost the exact same reason. But mud puppies and axolotls diverged from each other about 100 million years ago, and then both of them developed the same characteristic on their own. Metamorphosis takes a lot of energy, and where these guys live, the water is cold and murky and low in oxygen at times. Having those large frilly gills helps them breathe and find oxygen where you wouldn't expect it to be. My hypothesis is that this was a reaction to the asteroid that killed off the dinosaurs. These things appear in the fossil record at about 65 to 70 million years ago, right when the sediment from the impact would have choked the water. Same with the mud puppies. When the water is covered in dust and sediment and the sky is fogged over, this adaptation kept them alive. These guys are only in Mexico, but mud puppies are in the Great Lakes area. I want to be clear, that's pure speculation on my part. There's no evidence either way, so take that with a grain of salt. The tiger salamander can reject adulthood and stay juvenile, but it doesn't reach sexual maturity by doing so. Axolotls do. Mud puppies and axolotls both came up with the same solution to low oxygen water, but they did it in very different ways. Mud puppies have the hormone to become adults, but the receptors are turned off in certain parts of the body. Axolotls don't have the hormone at all. They turned off the ability to make it. Functionally the same solution, but quite different in how it's done. If you force feed axolotls thyroid hormones, they can become salamanders, but they lose their regenerative abilities. In about 40 days, they can normally regrow an entire limb with the muscles and bones and everything. But once you force them to develop into adults, that ability goes away and they don't live as long. All of the captive bred axolotls came from about 34 specimens captured in 1863. In order to reintroduce diversity into the gene pool, zoos have interbred them with tiger salamanders. The captive bred ones are not strictly axolotls anymore. They've tried to rehabilitate wild populations by growing them in captivity and releasing them, and they do well at first. Except the released ones end up susceptible to hawks and birds because you're only releasing a couple dozen adults who've never dealt with predation. They end up getting eaten. They're named after an Aztec god called Xolotl, from the Nahuatl language. The ATL part means water. In Aztec tradition, the ancient gods were being sacrificed to create the sun, and Xolotl didn't want to be sacrificed. So he transformed himself first into 2 stalks of maize, then into a maguey plant, and then into a salamander to hide under the water. He was eventually found and killed and sacrificed anyway, but they named this salamander after him because of that story. They've had a major die-off since the 90s. They estimate somewhere around 95 to 99% of the wild population is gone. Their problem is invasive species like tilapia and carp that eat their eggs, sewage and pollution runoff from urban sprawl, and habitat loss. There's a pet trade for them. I don't think they're wild caught. I think they breed well in captivity, so if you have a pet axolotl, it was likely bred in captivity. But they're not doing so hot in the wild.